Hello everyone. So I'm Abhishek Doshi, and I hope that you all are safe and keeping your relatives and surroundings pretty safe. So today's topic, or you can say today's talk, is on trees that are available in Flutter. The talk heading is Nature of Flutter. Who has the best trees? So now let's move forward. First of all, who am I? So basically, I am a Google developer expert for Dart and Flutter. I am also Google mentor, mentoring individuals as well as startups who wish to migrate to Flutter or who want to learn Flutter. As an professional, I am senior Flutter engineer at Somnia Software. I've been working in Flutter since almost 3 years now, and I also write tech articles in Flutter. I am also the organizer of Flutter Valsad and co-organizer of Flutter India. So you can say that my entire life revolves around Flutter. So first of all, before we jump to trees of Flutter, what first of all let's see what exactly is state. So every widget has its own properties, and that properties can be considered as the state. So basically, in technical terms, state is an object that can be manipulated throughout the lifetime or life cycle of the widget, and using the state we can get information about the widget and even rebuild the widget. That's the reason we use set state. So what is the role of state then, and how is it useful? So we can consider that there are three main usefulness of state. One is information about widget. State is the information that can be read synchronously when the widget is built. It basically holds the properties of the widget. Second is it can rebuild the UI whenever we need. So basically, state is the object that is responsible for rebuilding your UI. That's the reason we have init state, create state, set state. So basically, when we want to rebuild our UI, we call set state. And the third is gives control over life cycle. So basically, state can change during the lifetime of the widget. And you can say a warning, if you don't utilize it properly, it can have adverse effects on your app. Even your app can crash, you can have memory leaks, you can have unwanted states, etc. So then, which trees are responsible for rendering in Flutter, or you can say which trees are there in Flutter? So there are basically three main trees: widget tree, element tree, and render object tree. Widget tree, if we say in simpler terms, it holds the widget. Element tree contains information whether the widget is stateless or stateful element, and the render object tree contains the properties and paint protocols of the widget. So let's go with the first one, that is widget tree. So basically, widget tree is a tree that is created whenever you create your design of the screen. So let's suppose you have a container, and inside that you have a row as its child, and inside the row you have three columns as its children, and inside each column you have an icon and container. So the widget tree for the same is available on the screen, you can see. So basically what happens is, let's say whatever root widget that you have on your screen will be the root of your widget tree, and the way you create the way you create your widgets on the screen, based on that your widget tree is created. So technically widget tree is a tree that will be created based on how you design your screen and how you are adding widgets to your screen. So you can consider the widget tree as the most simple tree in Flutter. So I hope widget tree was pretty clear. Now, whenever we create a widget tree, the Flutter framework creates another tree called element tree. So an element tree just contains the information that whether the widget that you have provided is stateful element or a stateless element. We all know what is the difference between a stateful and stateless. Basically, stateful has state properties, stateless doesn't have state properties. So an element tree represents the use of a widget to configure a specific location in the tree. So you can also say that element tree is responsible for implementing or configuring the specific location of a widget in the tree. This element will depict whether the widget is a stateless element or a stateful element. The element can change if the parent widget rebuilds and creates a new widget for this location. So let's say, for example, you have a column. So basically column is a stateless widget. Okay. So besides the entry of the column, inside the element tree, there would be stateless element. Same way we have icon text as a stateless element. Now if you have a user defined class, so let's suppose that my home page, which is my home page extends stateful widget, so it becomes a stateful element. So in the same way, in the element tree there would be an entry for my home page which will be called as a stateful element. And the third one, which is the most important one, is the render object tree. Now render objects tree basically holds only the paint properties like child position, basic layout, x and y coordinates of the widget in the tree, in the screen, paint protocols, etc. However, it doesn't define how many children a parent will have or where the child will be positioned in the Cartesian system. Basically, it holds the x and y properties, but it doesn't define where the child will be positioned. So, you can say that render object tree contains the basic details of the widgets, which is responsible for the painting of the widget. So basically, render object is an object that is created for each element that is present in the element tree. Now the render object tree is responsible, as I said, it is responsible for painting the widget on the screen. And the widget tree or the Flutter framework always considers the render object tree to define or to repaint the widgets that we have on the screen. So let's suppose you call set state in your screen. Okay. So Flutter framework would first check the widget tree, then it would check the element tree, and then it will check the render object tree to redefine or repaint that particular widget on the screen. Now, because of this, some of the widgets like stateful widget or stateless widget, few of them are very costly to rebuild, few of them are very not that much costly to rebuild based on the availability of the trees that we have. So just to summarize, you can say that render object tree is responsible for defining or painting the widgets on the screen. So here's the summary of all the three trees. That is, widget tree contains all the widgets that you use in Flutter and holds the configuration of a UI. Element tree represents the use of a widget to configure a specific location in the tree and contains a piece of UI, stateful element or a stateless element. And third, that is the most important one, render object tree or render tree holds the properties of the widget along with paint protocols and is responsible for painting what you view on the screen. So here's the summary, or here's the verdict you can say. Render object tree is responsible for painting, element tree is responsible for holding which element the particular widget is, and the widget tree is responsible for all the configurations of the UI part. So I hope this was clear and I hope you learned something new today. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And yeah, I hope you learned something new and all the best for your Flutter journey. I would really be willing to help you. So feel free to connect with me on Instagram, Twitter, or LinkedIn. And I have the same user ID, that is Abhishek Doshi 26. And if you wish to read my articles, feel free to go to abhishekdoshi26.medium.com. I have been publishing many articles recently on Flutter, and one of the articles does contain this trees part as well. So if you feel that this session was not that much easy to grasp, you can definitely read the article. It has much more explanation, it has much more example, and in much simpler ways. So yeah, feel free to connect with me on Instagram, Twitter, or LinkedIn, or GitHub as well, and feel free to read my articles too. Thank you so much for joining today, and I hope you learned a lot today and you would be able to grasp knowledge about these trees, and if you are able to grasp it, it would be really helpful to understand how Flutter framework works. Thank you so much.